let's talk about Kyren Williams. Let's start with him. What, in your opinion, needs to happen for him to take his game to even another level? Because when he got the ball in his hands, good things happen. I mean, let's be honest. It was a great thing. But everybody can take that next step. If you're not getting better, you're getting worse. There's
sure.
no staying in the middle, right? So what does Kyren Williams need to do, in your opinion, to get better, to take that next step?
Well, I think obviously there's another level of production for him to get to. And yes, he was very, very good this year, but he averaged 5.3 yards per carry. In today's era of college football, that's not great.
Sure.
Tony Jones Jr. averaged 5.9 yards per carry, and nobody accused him of being a home run threat. So I think there's some things in that regards that you'd like to see a little bit more explosiveness. I think part of that can be Kyren as a first-year running back, not surprisingly, wasn't always consistent with his decision-making. Sometimes he would, and he got better, I think, as the year went on, but sometimes he'd freelance more than I think he should have, which would cost him yards. He'd bounce when he shouldn't have bounced. He would not cut back when he should have cut back. So the decision-making needs to improve. Again, we're talking about a redshirt freshman running back, right, who carried the ball 4 times. Those things are going to happen.
Sure.
But those are areas where he's got to get better. He had a really good year for the fact that it was his first year and all those kind of things, but there's still a lot of his game that needs to improve. For someone with great hands, he was inconsistent catching the ball out of the backfield on the normal running back stuff, screens and checkdowns. Really good catching the ball down the field, but there were 4 or 5 balls that he dropped this year where you're like, that's just inexcusable. I think it was Duke also where he had another screen pass that if he catches it, and it wasn't a perfectly thrown ball, but you got to catch it. That's a big play. And so I think that consistency in all regards is going to be important. And a lot is made of his pass blocking this year because he had some really punishing pass blocks. But again, that's another area where his grade from a play after play standpoint was not as good as his highlight reel. And that's the thing that I would say there about Kyren. If I could sum it up in one sentence, it is his consistency has to match his highlights.
Sure.
And if that happens and he's capable of it, then he's going to take that next step. And so those are the things that you have to work on with him as a coach. But then Kyren has to have that same hunger to get better that he had to get to where he was this past year. I mean, we've heard story after story about the work Kyren put in the offseason, and that's great. But what happens with some young players is when they achieve that level of success, he was a second-team All-American. He's, getting this honor and that honor, this accolade, that accolade.
Yeah.
Can he keep that same hunger to say, okay, now I want more? I'm confident that he will, but he's got to show it. I think Kyren is a naturally hungry, proven player, or hungry to prove himself player. I don't view him as someone who's going to get complacent. I just don't think that's his personality. Right. Having said that, I still need to see him show it. I need to see him take pride in the things he didn't do well. I need to see him have the same kind of attitude that Jeremiah Owusu has. And I've told this story. I interviewed Jeremiah Owusu this summer, and I kept wanting to talk about things that were positive, and he kept wanting to talk about things that were negative. I brought up the bowl game against Iowa State, and I think he had 4 tackles for loss, like 3 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He didn't want to talk about any of that stuff. He talked about this play he should have made, that play he should have made. That's just kind of who he was. And that's what I think a lot of the great players are that way is they I won, but I next time I want to win by more, or I ran for 1,100 yards, but I should have ran for 1,300 if I would have done this right, that right, this other thing right. So some of the 5.3 yards per carry is offense related and the lack of RPOs, which allows teams to easily get 9 in the box against Notre Dame. Other parts of it are he needs to eliminate some of the minuses or the 2-yard gains that should have been 8-yard gains had he executed at a higher level, which is something I think all young backs will do. Chris Tyree needs to get better in that regards too. So if he can do those things this spring, Vince, then there's a chance that Kyren Williams could take his game to a significantly higher level. And the positive there is the more efficient he becomes, then the less pounding he takes. But then also it provides more opportunities for you to then get other backs in the game. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what we're going to get from Kyren Williams in his second year as the go-to back. Last year he had to earn the starting role. Now I think it's his, and he has to then say, okay, I'm not worried about starting anymore. Now it's I want to be the best. and I want to be the best back in the country. What do I got to do to get there? And if Kyren is who I think he is, then that will be his objective, and being part of a winning team will be part of that. But there are certainly areas in his game that need to get cleaned up, and as they do, then his ability to dominate it'll take off.